welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Vic. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate having you on, brother. I been looking forward to this. I know it's been a little bit of a journey to get you on, but for all the listeners, I was on Kevin's podcast and I loved his energy and everything. But I was like, I got to have him on. You can check out that episode in the show notes. But Kevin, getting right to the point of things. My listeners know I like to get straight to the point on stuff. Tell me a little bit about your story. How did you get into what you're doing today?
Yes, thank you for asking, and I'd be happy to share because my journey is not a linear one, which I feel like many people don't have a linear journey, especially when it's aligned with their purpose or what they really love to do and how they help people. But for me, I have not always been a transformational life coach, helping people and deepening with their understanding of who they are as a soul. Um, my story started on the opposite end of the scientific side of things, and I went to school to get my doctorate in pharmacy, but that path I chose because I love helping people. I want to help people. And I also love the science of things. But it was after just a handful of years, just 4 years in my undergrad, that I started to discover that that path wasn't really aligned with my core values as I grew. Because when I was 17, when I chose that path, like, how do I really know exactly what I want to be doing? But 4 years into it, I started working in a community pharmacy, and I saw just the same people coming back again and again and again, month after month, with the same health issues. And over those several months, at first it didn't really bother me. It was just kind of curious, just a curiosity. But over time, seeing the same people, and I feel like we weren't actually helping. I wasn't making a difference in these people's lives. It just broke my heart because I wanted to help people. That was a core of why I even chose that career path. So I think there's, even to this day now, I still believe there's a place for Western medication, modern medication, but it's way overused. And so that was a pivotal point for me in my life because I felt like I had lost my purpose. And so I was kind of in this space of, should I stay in this career path? I just had a few more years to go to get my doctorate, and I would be making six figures, like security, money. And like my parents would say like, oh no, you'll be happy doing that. And like, I knew deep down it just did not align with me. It didn't resonate. And I even imagined me being a pharmacist, having my doctorate, doing that work, 12-hour shifts in a community pharmacy, which is generally like the most common path. And I felt like I was just like sacrificing my soul. And so it was a several month process of deciding, but ultimately I came to that point of no return of like, I'm not staying here. There's nothing else for me here. And I didn't know exactly what was next. And it was a scary decision to leave because my parents were saying I should stay in school, especially also, I mean, they funded my education, which I'm really grateful for and feel deeply privileged for that. But then also my friends, they were like confused. They were like, thought I was crazy. Like, Kevin, what are you doing? Like, why do you want to leave? And then my own internal doubts, right? Like all of that was coming up. And yet there was still this part of me that knew that something else was calling my name. I don't even know what it was yet, but I knew there was something else. And so decided to leave. And 2 days later is when I met my mentor. Her name is Mary Morrissey, and I've been now coaching with her and being mentored by her for 9 years. And it first honestly started out with me having her as a support and a coach to help me just discover what the heck I even want to do with my life. Because I just, freshly graduated with a 4-year degree, but no real path of like what I wanted to do for work or what I felt like my purpose was. So she helped me out a ton. And within a year, things changed. I got a year later, I did end up in a very synchronistic way. I won't tell that whole story. It's a long story, but I got a job working for a life coaching company. I was a content developer for them for 3.5 years. And I loved that work. And then over time, I really started to realize like, okay, this work has helped me so much. It's changed my life so much. I want to help others in the same way. And so it really connected with me with my purpose. And that was my journey to even getting certified, getting trained, studying deeper, and actually then working to start my business and help people and living their purpose or living the life they love. Really, that's where it starts.
I love that. Where did now learning how to trust that feeling, right? Because you had parents telling you one thing, friends, you had your own dilemmas internally, and then but you kept trusting that feeling. Is this something that you just developed in that moment? Have you had experiences with it before? Tell us a little bit about that.
Great question. So I think I had some versions of that when I was younger. Like I just felt that there was something going on in the universe. Especially from a scientific point of view, it's nuts. We live in an infinite universe. There's no end, and that, and now it's science, quantum physics would say it's a unified field of energy, but heck, in spirituality, we call it God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. There's something I knew that there was just something greater. So I think the trust came from that connection with source to some degree. And I don't think I had a conscious relationship with that when I was younger, but certain things happened, certain intuitions that would come to me and I would say something and it would be the perfect thing someone needed to hear, or like there was a move I wanted to make and decision I wanted to make when I was younger before I got into college and all, and it just worked out. So there was definitely some experiences with that, but it wasn't until I got studying personal development, which was like about a year and a half before I did leave my pharmacy career path. This probably was definitely like the spark of like awareness of spiritual awakening. Like I could do anything I want if I can have it in my mind and dream it. Like I read the first book I ever read in personal development was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That book cracked me open. And so it was a more conscious development over like a year and a half. But um, it's still in the moment, those times like when there's difficulty, it still can be difficult to actually connect with that knowing. Because again, like you said, like all the voices and everything like that. But definitely had some training, but still it comes down to taking leaps of faith sometimes.
I only bring that up because I know for even for myself, like just recently in my life in the last year and a half, I mean, I had a chiropractic office, very successful for 12 years. And then my wife and I uproot from Chicago and we moved to Knoxville. And I'd have family members be like, why you've spent all this energy creating this awesome, you got into the community, people trust you, you're the go-to person, all the things that you wanted to create you created, and then yet you're leaving all that to go start a whole, not start because I was already doing it coaching, but do a whole new career into it, like full time is into that. And they were just like puzzled by it. But and I bring this up often is like there's that feeling I've had, and again, at this point in my life, when I made that choice, I'm very experienced with it. But before, it's like you brought up something that I wanted to share because it's like when you were talking about going the pharmacy route and this feeling of like you knew there was it. I think you said the soul was like you felt. What was like that feeling that was showing up inside? Was it feel like you were dying inside if you kept going that route? Like, what if you mind just elaborating a little bit on that?
Yes. I mean, you actually hit the nail on the head. It really did feel like I was dying inside because, that path it was very well laid out. It was a well-worn path and it just didn't feel right to me, which it can sound crazy, like you said, to many other people. But if you have that inside, then there's a level of knowing that can't be described with words because it is a feeling, that experience. But yeah, the pain of it, I like to define it as both a longing and a discontent. Those are two really, really good words to help identify that for me of like when that feeling is coming up because longings are that desire for something more, something different. They just know like it's for you. The opposite end of that is the discontent of that pain of like, oh, like I just don't feel good here. I feel contracted or my energy is hemmed in. There's a limitation or a box around me in some way. And everyone has their own different experience of what that is in their life. But I think that feeling is universal. We all go through that at some point in our life, and some more challenging than others. I think it just depends on the person you are and where you're at in your life. But yeah, for me, it was feeling like I was dying inside. In fact, before I ever got even connected with my mentor and asking certain questions to help evoke what the real answer is for ourselves, to know what's best for ourselves, I believe I got it from a book. I don't remember which one, but it was this idea of thinking to the end of your life, like really going that far out. Because in invisible ink, in the future, we imagine, of course, it's very far out for each and every one of us. Of course, we want to live a full, long life, most of us. There is going to be a point where we're going to make our transition. That's guaranteed. No one gets out of this life alive. So at the end of your life, would you be proud of the decision that you make in this moment? That's the move. And that's honestly like what I got to. Because yes, there was that, uncertainty and fear, of course, of making that transition and change. Much, I'm sure, similar to you, and maybe not overwhelming since you've been studying and working with this and actually taking steps in your life all the time. But it's still there, But that question is really, really helpful, I found.
I love that question because it's something I wrote in my first book, and I got this from
Nice.
I forgot what motivational speaker now, but he was talking about living on E, and I just go, I love that because you got to live on, go all out, have every experience. And my wife and I looked at each other too, and we said, I have a mission in my life where I won't have no regrets. And hey, maybe there will be some things that'll show up, but I'm not that type of person anyhow. But it's one of those things I just was like, we looked at ourselves and said, will we regret not doing this later in our life? And the
Right.
answer was, yeah, we would if we never took the chance because it was the prime moment. We didn't have kids yet. And we were like, we really felt like we had to get at it. We just felt Chicago, we love Chicago. We love, our whole family's there and my upbringing and everything it gave me for my life. But it felt at a point in our life where like, we just felt done. Like
Mm.
it was it. And I was like there for like 5 years already. My wife took a couple more years before that happened. But it's that trust in that was there fears where there's worry. Of course, they're always there. I'm human. They're going to come up and they still come up to this day from time to time.
Right.
But it's, in the long run, I look back and I just go, well, this is one less thing I won't regret.
Exactly.
And I love how you bring up we're talking about feelings here a little bit, and I want to kind of shift this into more. We talked about soul and stuff and whatnot. How can they, individuals find their purpose or find their path or find that you talked about before we got on? We talked about that genius in us and
Yes.
whatnot. How do we? How's that all begin? How's that look like?
Great question, and I appreciate you asking because this is my work. For much as I've gone through in the last decade of discovering my purpose and then living it, that I find is the most rich work that I get to do, and I feel like that's why I'm here. And for me, the beginning point of this for anyone, whether you feel like you're actually like on your way or like you have no freaking clue at all, is to shift the wording that we use because you actually even use a very common word that most people think of when it comes to purpose, life purpose, soul purpose, whatever you want to call it, but to find it. I don't believe it's something we find because finding it is, in essence, it's unconsciously thinking about it as something to look outside of ourselves for, or it's something like we don't have and we have to go looking for it. Versus the proper word I find, and it's my favorite word in the English language, is discover. You discover it. Because if you hyphenate that word, discover, it really reveals the true work is that you're not trying to find it, you're discovering it. You're taking off the cover of what's already inside of you. And I'm sure you talk about this tons in your podcast, like literally called the mindful experiment, but that talk about programming, right? We all have programming. I don't think anyone can get out of this human life alive without having some level of programming. Like especially for 7 years of our life, we have to have that programming in order to learn how to function as a human being. But that programming often dampens or taps down our innate knowing of what we're here to do and who we're here to be. So the process I find is the discovery. And as you take layers off of like recognizing, and I often use questions like, all right, is that really me or is that really what I want? Is that what I would really love? Or is this thought, this idea, this dream, this vision, this what I think my purpose is this coming from maybe what my mom told me I should have or do, or what my parents thought was best for me, or what society says is prestigious. Like I think that was a part of the reason why I chose pharmacy. It was just programming. And once I had then unlearned some of that, of like, I don't think this industry is super helpful, then I started to discover that and then actually align more with what I really feel I'm here to be and do. So that what I recommend, that's what I would recommend as the first step is changing the words and then start asking ourselves those kinds of questions.
I love it. It's one of the three words I have in my business is discover, expand, and evolve. So it's like, and I love the way you broke that down. I knew we were going to have a lot of, synchronicities here. So and even just your podcast, science, the
Science
science of
and spirituality.
and spirituality. That's what it was. I was going to say the science of spirituality, but, yeah, it's amazing how we put our labels and the words we choose, right? It's like one of them that's been I was really big on this before, and it's like coming back in my life about like people are like, what's your problem? The problem you have to, and I'm like, don't use the word problem. Get that out of your vocabulary because if you have a problem, you're going to have a problem. But if you have a challenge just means you're being challenged, and when you shift that word, the energy is different. And it means that then all of a sudden the solutions you're going to start being like, okay, I'm getting challenged, but I'm gonna conquer this challenge. Why? Because your mind's looking now for solutions rather than I have a problem, and you feel powerless because this is a problem you have to deal with. Like, and Yeah, you bring up a lot of things when it comes to the layering effect too. I mean, it's just it is something I talk heavily on, and we're all
Good.
programmed in some way, shape, or form. I became a chiropractor in the first 5 years of my career. I wanted to be successful. Just to, as I look back, it was one to show that I broke through the blue collar mentality, and I came from a family that was making paycheck to paycheck, and I was like, I'm going to do all of my power not to let that happen, and I did. I hit my
Right.
financial peak in 5 years, but then I started asking the real question: why? What was the real deeper reason why I became a chiropractor? What kind of chiropractic do I want to do and share with the world? And that was now I was getting into purpose. And we're using the word purpose. I call it a vision. Um,
Yeah.
and again, there's many different names you can choose, but and it's one of those elements. But you talked about that first step is discovery, right? Taking the layers off, choosing different labels. Then what's the next thing that for the listeners they can, okay, they're hearing this, they love it, they're, okay, right, it's a discovery process. It's I don't have to go out and find my purpose. I like that because it's a mental trick. Because you, like you said, you find it, you're looking outside instead of within. what what's step two, if there is?
Start, yeah. Start living it now. Because that's another myth I find in when there's any conversation around purpose is that like I'm going to, like I'm working on actually like fulfilling my purpose as if there's some end goal to it. But we all, once we get to understand like what we're really here for, which it can be broken down very simply when we start to discover what we really are here for. Like personally for me, in a simple format, I'm here to help people live their soul's purpose. I could say that in one sentence. I can't tell you how many years it got me to actually discover that and really claim that and know that for myself and actually believe that that's enough, but I think anyone can start finding that and or discovering that. See, notice even the programming, I'll have the words here and there, but so to discover that is it's just steps you can take now. And then it just comes back to the questioning, what can I do to start living that purpose that I might believe that is mine? Because like when I left pharmacy school, as I shared, like I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I didn't really know my purpose. It was a discovery process, as we talked about, but I started living my purpose from day one when I said, I'm done with this career path. I really see, looking back now and connecting the dots, the truth was I was taking the steps and actually starting to live my purpose right then and there, and actually celebrating that and calling that good rather than feeling like it's got to be something down the line, which it will be. Maybe a more expanded version of what you want to do in terms of living your purpose or making an impact in the people's lives that you care about. And that doesn't have to be work either. I find that I just resonate mostly with just having supporting people and helping them live their purpose when they have a difference they want to make in the world. But that could be in relationships. Like I find a lot of parents find their purpose is within their family unit, providing a really solid foundation for their kids as they're growing up. That's purpose right there. It's not work. It's like, the traditional career, earning money from it and all, but it's absolutely purposeful. And so it's living in those moments and asking like, what can I do today to live my purpose, what I feel is mine to do. So it's super simple when it comes to that.
It is, and I love how you brought up the whole thing. It's not a destination. It's really just the journey of it all. Like when you're really living your purpose, it's a question I ask a lot of clients in the work that I do. Is like I'll ask them, what is something that you love to do that you can do it for free because of
Right.
how much it gives you something that's beyond monetary and it's something beyond this life, which means you can take it with you. And it's always fascinating because the answer is it's just like asking, what do you want? And it's a simple question, right? So hard for people to answer that question. I know personally because I was asked that question 20 something years, it's when I was 23, 22, 23, 24. Like, what do you want? What do you want as a chiropractor? What do you want in your life? And I was like, let's see here. Yeah, I want the nice big house, the car, the standard programming. And it's one of those things where, but purpose is something that you are living day in and day out that fuels you. And for the listeners, that's something that once you find that, to me, this is just my definition of fulfillment is there's two of them. Two parts to it. One is, choosing what you want to experience and experience it. But the second one then is, um, um, doing what you love to do. Like you do something and it's just like, you can't see yourself never not doing it.
Right.
because you shared something about I would say your vision. You said your purpose. Same thing. Because I sometimes I say when I'm sharing vision, I'm like, it's your soul's purpose, your life's purpose, or XYZ. Why do you exist in this world today? That's one of the questions I'll ask clients. And it's that principle, like you shared yours in a sentence, mine is raising the conscious levels of individuals to help them remember the greatness of who they are. Yeah, and that's, and that's as simple as that. Now, like, saying it in a sentence, right? Took many years to cultivate that, to get to just raising consciousness levels to help people remember the greatness of who they are. Because I know my whole thing is, if I can help them remember the greatness of who they are, game over, I'm done. Because everything else they'll take care of on their own.
Right. That's really beautiful. There's a recommendation I have for helping people and discovering and really diving deep into like those words, because I think it's really important to have something that's a simple version, because those words can then give so much into your life as you keep them in mind. It's easy to remember, then able to share that with others, so you can connect with others that either you're meant to serve, or that it could be great community and support with you. And as you're building that dream or living your purpose, maybe you've heard of it. Start with Why by Simon Sinek, classic book, but he has a workbook, not as well popular known, or not as well known, or not as popular. It's called the Discover Your Why. It's a literal workbook. I might be getting the title wrong exactly, but look up Simon Sinek and his workbook, and that there's a process to go through, whether it's an organization, personal, like in your own personal life, or even just as a solopreneur, entrepreneur. There's certain exercises you have to do to go through, and that's how I discovered really that wording. Which, funny enough, just to share, Vic, your words that you shared is actually similar to mine. Like that's like the even shorter version, what I mentioned before about helping people live their soul's purpose. But it's specifically to help, in order to live their soul's purpose, to deepen their own trust in themselves and the universe, to help them make the impact on expanding consciousness in the world that they're meant to make. Go figure. Another synchronicity.
I knew there's going to be a few of them.
Yes.
But it is, and it's one of those things, like, because and again, this all stems for me was like being a kid, and I remember I used to have aunts and family members, but you want to go deep. Why do you want to talk deep so much? And I was always like, what else is there to talk about? Like
Right.
sports. I mean, I love talking about sports, but I'd rather play it.
Right.
That's just how I was. And it just comes to that purpose, like, and as I kept evolving into this world, and all my own little, again, no one's path is linear. At least I haven't interviewed anybody in my podcast that has had a linear path. I very close to one. I had one that was almost there. He wanted to be a construction. That's what he wanted to be. But at the point of where he is and what he's doing, he was like, there was some little deviant point, like it wasn't straight. So I'm like, okay, you are the closest I've ever had. But it is one of those things where, but when I started getting into the spiritual work and getting into this kind of stuff, it was just like understanding consciousness and this whole game called life. I was like, yeah, no, expanding consciousness for individuals is where it's at. Because if we could do that, like what you're doing, the same thing, when you're helping people on their soul's purpose, you're expanding their consciousness. And then when you expand consciousness, and it's a whole new game. You're at a whole new vibration. There's a whole new playing field that you can experience and whatnot. And the beautiful thing about life is there's no end to that. It's just, how high do you want to go? How far do you want to go? How deep you want to go? And where do you want to go with it? And how long do you want to stay in that realm?
Yes. Infinite goes back to that. We're literally living in an infinite universe. And so there's infinite ways of expressing that. And it's just beautiful. And I really believe, the end point of all of this for me, end point, quote unquote, right? But where I really see that my mission is really is to help create peace on earth. I know I cannot do that alone. It's impossible, quite literally, but I believe it's possible. And it's interesting when I even say that, because I always love sharing that bigger vision, but I'm not naive enough to think that there's going to be no like turmoil, challenge in between human beings or nations, or, a state between state, or whatever it is. But we don't have to have the bloodshed or manipulation, or like literally we are one race, one human species. And so until we live together, like then we're doomed. And so there's a lot of seeing that. And I do my best to have some lightness around it, but we desperately need that if we want our species to continue.
I couldn't agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I mean, it is, I always joke around and say we can't get along on this planet and all these other things that we have going on, but yet once we go space exploration, and all of a sudden, let's say we're on Mars or Pluto or some other planet in some other solar system, and you see another human being, Are you going to be very happy to see another human being, want to connect
Oh
with them?
yeah.
Absolutely, right? But
Right.
like I experienced this when I moved from Chicago. I went to school at Arizona for a little bit, and I would when I see someone, I see someone I knew from Chicago or around the area, I'd be like, "Oh my god, where are you from? Where you live at?" Blah blah blah, and I just wanted to like get to know them and be like, "Oh my god, there's someone of my people that I know from my area or from where I live." And I think that's the kind of energy I'm always like, we need to come to that place and really do that. So I love the work you're doing. Before we wrap up, how can people find you, follow you, see what you're up to and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. I mean, one easy way, since you obviously you listening or listening to a podcast, if you'd love to check out me and my brother's podcast, it's called Science and Spirituality. We have hundreds of episodes. But my website, kevincarton.com, if you want to check out anything that I do as a coach. And then I also have a free gift that if you'd be willing to share as well, Vic, on your the description of the notes. It's called the Soul Purpose Blueprint. And it's literally the soulpurposeblueprint.com. If you want to check it out, it's a free download. It's about 11 pages to go deeper or in essence reiterate basically what everything we've covered already, Vic, in this call and or this podcast. But there's actually a place to get deeper into your purpose and your vision and actually writing it out so that you can put it down on paper to have it more real for you so you can start working with it. So if you're in the beginning of your journey or you want to refresh that, then that's a great guidebook to help. And then you obviously get signed up for emails and stuff, and you get more into my own world if you're interested.
Well, then for all the listeners, I'll have that in the show notes for you and so much more. Kevin, I knew this was going to be a joy and a blast, man. I really, this time flew by. But one of the things I got to say, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I just appreciate the work you're doing, man, and helping light up the world one person at a time.
That's the goal. That's what we're working on. Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Appreciate you, brother.